We're back with more NBA playoff coverage, and in this one I will be covering all of the Game 2 action in the conference finals round. So to get things started with the Timberwolves and Thunder, let's just say that Anthony Edwards got it going instantly, as he would pretty much start off the spurt of scoring with a layup of his own and just consistently try to generate looks in the paint against a litany of different defenders, whether it was Lucian Storage guarding him, whether it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander guarding him, or whether it was somebody coming from the back end to contest a shot at the rim. It felt like he was a little more, willing to drive into the paint in this one, and it certainly worked for him, as he would get 12 first quarter points in this period. But of course, this was still a close game throughout, and the Timberwolves were still down. Why? Well, for one, I guess maybe Scott Foster took it a little personally that Dortch would just accidentally hit him in the face and bloody him. I'm sure that somewhere at this point of time, matter of fact, yes, Chris Paul was on the sidelines for this game. His Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was presented with the MVP. So he was there, he saw this, and I'm sure he, on the inside, was just cheesing. But that's besides the point. In reality, both teams were going to do as best as they could to control the paint, because that's exactly what ended up happening in the first game. The Thunder completely dominated it, and they were forcing the Timberwolves out of there. So they won that game in commanding fashion. It felt like the Timberwolves wouldn't be as scared off to do so. But the Thunder appeared to still have pretty good paint defense when it came to accounting for paint shots. Julius Randle, despite Anthony Edwards going off, was held scoreless, I believe. And Anthony Edwards, even though he was getting to the rim, eventually it would become a case where he was just inefficient completely. You know, they would live with him driving, but there was always going to be a double team at play, and even if he wasn't necessarily going to force the ball out of his hands, they were going to make sure that he didn't get off a good look at all. Not to mention that while the Wolves defense guarded the Thunder fine in the first half of the last game, things just completely shifted here. For one, the biggest thing, obviously, it allowed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to get to his spots. So while he wasn't necessarily chugging up a ton of attempts, he was getting pretty efficient looks, and they just could not stop him once he got into a rhythm. Also, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren delivered completely. And of course, Hartenstein is always a steady presence, but this was also aided by the fact that their paint defense continued to be porous. I mean, the Thunder didn't even really have to think about many of their looks. The alley-oops were continuing, the backdoor cuts were continuing, and they even tried to space them out a little bit to free up space with a few mid-range shots as well from a good portion of their players. All that being said, it was a 4-point ball game to end off the first quarter, with the Thunder up 29-25. The second quarter would see an increase in contributions, namely from the bench of the Timberwolves. I mean, you had Dante DiVincenzo, Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker just get multiple buckets in this stretch, and then also Naz Reid, who I believe during this time had yet to miss a shot. So they were handling business on the bench unit after largely disappointing in the first game. And they needed that. Like, after a while, they nearly matched their production from last game in just this first half. So you wanted to see that go down. You figured that if they were going to turn Edwards into a playmaker, you'd figure that they would kind of back off a little bit defensively if these players were beginning to hit their shots. And Anthony Edwards would get himself into a groove, also hitting a three-pointer and then a layup of his own with an and one at play. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander down this stretch as well just took it upon himself to create a massive amount of distance here. Just getting right at the rim, drawing fouls, and even hitting a fadeaway jumper and then a step back three-pointer on none other than Jaden McDaniels. A costly turnover also allowed the Thunder to get another possession at the end of this first half, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would just get in a couple more free throws, and then all of a sudden, they held a 58-50 lead, despite the Timberwolves going on multiple 7-2 runs in this stretch alone. Again, when your defense remains to be that porous, and when your core guys aren't stepping up, like a Rudy Gobert and like a Julius Randle, who hadn't done much of anything up to this point. Obviously, Anthony Edwards is going to feel as though he needs to put it all on his shoulders. That's a heavy burden for him to carry. And it felt like he just became truly blind with tunnel vision in this one. Some of the plays that he was trying to make just had no chance of being executed to perfection at all, because the defense was just that good. But you don't trust Julius Randle in that moment. You don't trust Rudy Gobert ever. That's just the spot he found himself in. And that would continue for a little bit in the third quarter. I mean, they would get just a little bit of progress and they would get the game back down to 4 points. But essentially, after the halfway mark of this third quarter, the Thunder just turned shit around completely, because turnovers were already an issue. They flared up in the worst ways imaginable during this sequence of time. They're just getting out in transition and giving themselves easy looks to where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can go and get himself an and one. Alex Caruso can hit multiple shots. Cason Wallace can continue hitting multiple shots. And then SGA can get a steal into a Chet Holmgren alley-oop. Now, for whatever reason, they just wanted to be weak about this, because they called a fucking technical foul on that man after dunking it over Dante DiVincenzo and staring him down. That shit was so weak. And I'm telling you, he did not give a shit about that whatsoever, because it was just all clicking for the team on both sides of the basketball. And it would not stop, even after the timeout is done. The Thunder continued to get right in the faces of their ball handlers that they were guarding and just making life completely miserable for them. Ultimately, they would get up by as much as 24 points in this third quarter prior to Anthony Edwards hitting the final shot to bring it down to just 22. The fourth quarter would make things a little interesting, but I suppose that we all knew how things were going to go, especially with the Thunder being able to go on the stretch of shooting that they did in the third quarter, especially from deep. That's not something that the Timberwolves were truly game planning for, but at the same time, the fact that they were having their way in the paint like this forced you on occasion to just break the mold and try and contest these shots in a much better fashion. Ultimately, that left shooters open, and the Thunder were able to exploit that repeatedly. The Timberwolves, I guess, would not go down without a little bit of a fight. I mean, Nickeil Alexander-Walker in this fourth quarter, for crying out loud, had 10 points. But Julius Randle, when they needed him the most, simply didn't play because he just had not performed well. He had 6 points on horrible shooting. And now you're thinking that he could come back into a ball game like this and produce at a high level? Finch thought otherwise, apparently. You also had the bench, again, led by Alexander Walker, continuing to do good work. Anthony Edwards got a few shots here and there, but at the end of the day, just 6 points in the fourth quarter for him as well is a little bit underwhelming given what this team needed. And as the Thunder continue to suffocate this team defensively, they would ultimately win the ball game with the final score of 118-103. For the Thunder, the man who was presented with the MVP trophy, the Michael Jordan trophy, would score 38 points, 8 assists, and 3 rebounds as well, while also tallying 3 steals on 12 of 21 shooting with a 3 and also 13 free throws. He became the franchise record holder for most consecutive 30-point playoff games. And also, there was a sequence where he was performing so well that McDaniels just decided to get pissed off and just push him straight to the ground, getting himself a foul easily. And in the press conference following that, he said he just wanted to foul him for real at that point. I mean, obviously this was late in the ball game, but I'm like, yes, tensions are definitely rising in him, specifically anger at that point of frustration. I understand that. But at the same time, it was on Jaden McDaniels here. I mean, this is crazy to say, but this man, SGA, had 20 points on 60% shooting from the field and also 10 free throws. Well, 8 free throws. Against Jaden McDaniels when he was the primary defender. If you are one of the better perimeter defenders or wing defenders in the league, allowing that to happen, that's your fault. So how exactly can you take that out on SGA? I don't know. I don't know at all. But that's insane to me. Meanwhile, Jalen Williams would have 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists with a steal on 12 of 20 shooting with 2 threes. Chet Holmgren had 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists on 8 of 17 shooting with a 3. They shot 50% from the field while also getting just 9 3-pointers. But again, that's what it came down to. The Timberwolves were forced to play with these offensive players posting up, getting easy looks in the paint. They were playing at their speed. And it's clear that in those moments they could not match what they were doing at all. The Thunder, with this win here, would notch 60 combined wins by double digits on the entire season, which is tied for the most in a single season since the 2016 Golden State Warriors squad. As for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards would have 32 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists with a block on 12 of 26 shooting with just 1 3-pointer made on 9 attempts. Rough performance for him. I mean, again, you're trying to put the team on your back, but they know that as well, and they were more than ready for you to do this. Jaden McDaniels had 22 points on 8 of 15 shooting with 4 threes. And again, off the bench, Nickeil Alexander-Walker had 17 points on 5 of 8 shooting with 3 threes. And Naz Reid had 10 points on 3 of 8 shooting. DiVincenzo even had 8 points for crying out loud. But again, I look at Julius Randle, I look at Rudy Gobert, and I look at Michael Conley Jr. They all combined for just 5 of 22 shooting, 1 of 7 from deep, and also 14 combined points between the three. That's what it ultimately came down to, in my opinion. At least their core starters rose up to the occasion and bounced back properly. I don't know what the hell Julius Randle was doing out there, seriously. And again, while you would like to have him in those closing minutes, at the same time, literally nothing about his play suggested that he would be ready for those big moments down the stretch. Unfortunately, I guess they just wanted those guys to get prepped for the next game. And I mean, hey, getting into it, Anthony Edwards would have to try to balance out aggressiveness, because he certainly had it, don't get me wrong. I mean, to take 26 shots in a situation like that, that's what you wanted to see from him. But you would also like to see more efficiency naturally seep in to his playing style. Because if they can just continue to force his hand and make him commit to errant decisions, even with him making all the shots that he has, that only helps your defense out. Just a full-on dominant display here. The Timberwolves staring down a barrel at this point. They would have to turn it around. Moving on to the Pacers and the Knicks. And again, as crazy as that game was, as legendary as this game was, there were still a massive amount of takeaways that both teams had that they attempted to incorporate in this one. As started, the Knicks would open up the scoring like last game. But the Pacers had a different plan in mind. Because, personally, again, while Pascal Siakam, played well in the last game, along with many other people saying this, honestly, I felt that he could have done more, especially when it mattered the most. And if you think that Anthony Edwards had a hot start to that game, well, what about fucking Pascal Siakam coming out, opening up the scoring with the first few buckets in the game for the Pacers? In fact, having all 11 of their points at just the 8:24 mark of the first quarter. Offense outside of Siakam, though, was slow, and you have to give credit to the Knicks for that. They were providing as much on-ball pressure on Tyrese Halliburton as they could, because given what that man did single-handedly in the last game, you don't want him to have the ball in his hands like that. And even on drives as the game would progress, they would try to send a body at him, and on a few occasions, he did get blocked by the help defense. So that was a good adjustment on their behalf. Other guys like Andrew Nembhard were struggling for the most part to get shots up as well, and Miles Turner also did not do much of anything, really. As for the Knicks, they did get a brief amount of help from Miles McBride despite being down by at least 10 points here, because they would then respond with what would be a 22-5 run over the course of the next few minutes leading into the second quarter as their defense continued to ramp up. Mitchell Robinson got right into this game, and already when it came to making great plays on the glass and extending possessions, they were already doing it to full effect, and it got the Garden hyped up completely. But still, the Pacers were right in it. The Knicks were winning by 2, though, and it felt like they could maintain this a little bit as long as they just stuck with playing at their pace. Because this is the thing, again, last game was certainly high scoring. A 26-24 first quarter is relatively standard in the NBA today. Do you know how crazy it is to say something like that as well? The fact that the Pacers are such a dynamic offense to where a pretty good scoring first quarter and a pretty standard one in the league overall is merely below average for them. That's insane. Yet it was working wonders for this Knicks squad, who would continue to at least impose their own will, although even with Karl-Anthony Towns getting an and one on Pascal Siakam would get him right back. And this was the thing. Other Pacers players towards the very tail end of the first half started to heat up. But if we're being completely honest, Pascal Siakam was truly keeping them afloat here. The Knicks, they were trying to stop him, and yet they had no way to do so. I feel like they genuinely didn't see this coming. We're talking about a player in Pascal Siakam who was literally a co-star alongside Kawhi Leonard, alongside Kyle Lowry in the 2019 finals. And we're talking about a man who was an established champion. So, I mean, to give him that kind of free reign to work with in this playoff series is a little interesting to me. It took a while for Tyrese Halliburton as well to just get on the board again. He was struggling completely due to the pressure. And I mean just from the field. When it came to assists, that was no problem for him. I mean, one of his earliest assists just gets a damn no-look pass over to Pascal Siakam. He did not have a single turnover at this point of time, I believe. So, from that perspective, he was just fine. But when it came to scoring, they were doing everything they could to sell out for it. And again, that's the thing when it comes to a player like Tyrese Halliburton. You would like to see him be consistently aggressive. But sometimes, when it comes to superstar players, or just any player for that matter, it is about taking what the defense can give you at any one moment of time. And the fact that he could steady the course like that is pretty promising to see. But again, it doesn't even top the fact that Pascal Siakam had a 26-point first half. Some people were saying he had 23 points. I counted 26. I don't know what the hell that was about. But again, at the end of the first half, even with all that being said, the Knicks had a lead. They had a 3-point lead. So you had to feel somewhat confident about yourself. And I mean, hey, Jalen Brunson was doing what Jalen Brunson does. After getting 8 second quarter points of his own, just continuing to hit tough shot after tough shot, despite his smaller frame compared to other people. But to open up the third quarter, I mean, Pascal Siakam would just continue to pour it on. Like, he was not done at all. And as both defenses continued to go toe-to-toe with each other, it just became more like a chess match. I mean, Tyrese Halliburton would get 5 straight points in this pocket of time here. And then you would have that followed up with Mikal Bridges continuing to hold it down for the Knicks, honestly, which was surprising to see. Even OG Anunoby during this time hit a few shots of his own. But Tyrese Halliburton and then Karl-Anthony Towns would try to one-up each other because, of course, anything one does better, anything that one person does, the other can do better. And then Jalen Brunson just joins in after a missed Tyrese Halliburton free throw to hit a 3-pointer of his own to tie up the ball game with 4:03 left in the third. We then have TJ McConnell come in and just continue to get some of the wildest shots imaginable up. But at that point, those are NBA veteran shots. You can't necessarily be too surprised like that, even with his frame. Also, interestingly, Rick Carlisle decided to put in Tony Bradley. He had not gotten consistent playing time pretty much this entire season. So that was very interesting. And he just looked bad out there. I'm not going to lie. Like, he did get a free throw, but to be honest, I mean, right off the bat, Jalen Brunson would just continue to feast off that. Literally gets Tony Bradley lost in a screen and just hits a three-pointer pretty much as soon as he gets on the court. It's craziness, man. So again, the Knicks, with Jalen Brunson coming back in and getting a nice fake on Nembhard, of all people, and then getting up a floater at the end of the third quarter, it would be a tie ball game. You know, you just had to do, as I kept stating throughout this game, you had to ensure that the Pacers could not hit that next gear. You had to keep their intensity somewhat suppressed and try to dictate the pace of this game. Because if at any point you let them do it, it was going to be a wrap. And safe to say, throughout the third quarter, that largely did not happen. They were doing everything they needed to do on that front, even with other guys outside of Siakam starting to step it up. Although, at multiple points, and I just got to note this, I mean, even in the fourth quarter, a little later on, you would have him get one. But I don't know why they continue to allow Aaron Nesmith to get open looks. Why? Like, yes, it can be hard for pretty much any player, let alone any, like, I guess, role player to try and replicate the performance that he had in Game 1. It's hard. But at the same time, he did do it. It's home. You saw it unfold as you ultimately lost the prior game in heartbreaking fashion. So why then, after seeing him go for 6 threes in one quarter and then 3 straight deep in clutch time, to give him those looks repeatedly? Felt like if he truly wanted to, he could have made them pay even more for it. Because there's just no way. Like, you didn't learn anything. That was one of the larger gripes I had. Is like, how do you see that unfold and you don't adjust to that properly? It doesn't make any sense. And that's besides the point. The Knicks would temporarily take a lead with Mikal Bridges getting around a pretty weird-looking fadeaway shot, but it did go in, all things considered. Then the Pacers would follow that up with a quick 5-0 run of their own. Well, they got within one, rather, the Knicks, and then the Pacers went on a 5-0 run. But not to be outdone, Pascal Siakam gets right back into it and instantly hits a three-pointer, just continuing that efficiency and volume that he was putting down in this game. Mikal Bridges would have another couple of buckets in his bag, and then, yes, as I just mentioned, you would have Aaron Nesmith literally come off of a screen as Jalen Brunson just gets completely crushed in the middle of it. Nesmith, the human torch that he is, just continues to light them up repeatedly. But Jalen Brunson is a clutch player of the year for a reason. And despite the Pacers keeping a steady lead, despite them also, with the help of Miles Turner now coming in and getting a few buckets, hitting a three-pointer off of an open assist from Tyrese Halliburton, and then also having Halliburton get what could have been the dagger in Pascal Siakam, getting a free throw, or a pair of free throws, and a bucket here. All of a sudden, you have a 10-0 run just out of nowhere. And at that point, you were thinking that the Knicks just lost everything completely. Because for that long amount of time, you held strong on both sides of the ball. And then just like that, you give up a 10-0 run. You start to get questionable play calls on offense. That was the wrong time to crumble. And that certainly, in a normal context, could have put the game away. But of course, nothing's truly normal about this series at this point. Because the Knicks would have OG Anunoby make a pair of free throws, and then single-handedly Jalen Brunson would just get tough bucket after tough bucket as the Pacers continued to miss their looks as well. Ultimately, despite them getting an extra possession, the Knicks would get the ball back, and honestly, at this point, they could bring it within one, or they could potentially tie up the ball game, or potentially, if the Pacers were thinking about fouling, even if it was by accident, could have gone up and taken the lead in the most optimal context. But instead, Jalen Brunson, he figured that he would want to put the game all on him here and take one of the final shots. But at the same time, the fact that Josh Hart got the look that he did off of the cut, like the entire middle of the painted area was just completely open. I'm figuring that Jalen Brunson wanted to take that shot even as I'm talking about this all these days later. But you couldn't pass that up. So Josh Hart would get a layup to bring it within one. And then Jalen Brunson, before they even inbound the ball, would grab on Neesmith's jersey and foul him. Interestingly enough, Pascal Siakam again did end up drawing multiple fouls in this game to where he was able to get to the free throw line. The thing is, he, and in large the team, they just struggled from the free throw line this game. Ironically enough, this is quite the twist because the Knicks were the team that could not hit a free throw to save their lives in the last one. And ultimately, that ended up being their undoing. Would it be the same case for the Pacers? I mean, you're sending Aaron Nesmith to the line when he hadn't even so much as attempted a free throw in this game to this point. So there were certainly possibilities that this could happen. But instead, Nesmith would end up making both. One thing to note as well after this free throw, because this is ultimately my biggest issue with what ended up going down in this game. So the Knicks, at this point in the fourth quarter, had only a single timeout. Now they came into the half with a disadvantage of timeouts, and ultimately with around 9 minutes left in the game, they still had just about one. Let me see. Yeah, they called their last one just before clutch time. So I'm thinking that there's no way that they were going to be able to potentially withstand any late runs from the Pacers. And if they were to give one up, that would be the end of it. But instead, the fact that they were able to battle back like that, it shows you just how battle-tested they have truly been. And it did help because they were able to conserve their timeout for the next 6 minutes and 50 seconds, or around 50 seconds. That's pretty miraculous in and of itself. And everything lined up to where you were in the perfect position to utilize it. If you have it, and you're getting the ball on the inbound after a pair of free throws, you'd figure that the head coach of any team in that situation dealing with this would call a timeout to advance the ball up the court, make sure that they get the last possession of the game, and also find a much better shot. But for whatever reason, Tom Thibodeau did not do it. Jalen Brunson brings the ball up the court and takes a contested three-pointer from damn near the logo. And while it takes Miles Turner a few seconds to recover it, he does get the rebound. And ultimately, after a pair of free throws on his end, that ends the ball game. I was like, I could not believe what I just saw from this man. Like, I think Tom Thibodeau was completely brain dead for this, because there's no way. You work that hard to consistently storm back in this game, and you get yourself within a single possession with just a few seconds left. And you do all that work of saving that timeout and holding on to it for as long as you can so as not to run out. You get that done, and you just waste the perfect opportunity to call it. It does not make sense to this point even. It's like, I guess people were saying that the Pacers were going to try to foul them intentionally anyways because they had a foul to give. But I'm like, even then, there's still a much better chance of you finding an open look to exploit if you are in a set offense already in the half court. Let your players breathe a little bit, because so much had happened to this point. Instead, you just let them run ragged and just run with their heads cut off completely, because nobody knew the game plan. Like, of course, Jalen Brunson, and it's an errant shot for sure, but I have to put that on Thibodeau. I can't blame Jalen Brunson for that, because given what the hell he had done down the stretch in at least 3 of these quarters here, was nothing short of spectacular. Of course he's going to feel like he is the clutch player of the year. Of course he's going to want to take full advantage of that. You can't blame him for that in that moment. Nobody else seemed to be set at all. I understand that. Nobody else was in their spots. You have the game on the line. You're the franchise player and the person that they look to in these moments. That is just a natural feeling. And when he has been efficient in those moments and clutched up, a lot of people will give him praise for that same display of confidence in those moments. So how would that not ring true here? Even if he missed, that's not necessarily the point. You wouldn't really want to have anybody else do it. But just like that, in 2 of the wildest ways imaginable now, the Knicks now find themselves at an 0-2 deficit. And again, history would say that given this deficit, the Knicks are royally screwed. But either way, it feels like you are. Because for you to lose home court advantage, they are now 3-5 in home games in this postseason, by the way. For you to go 0-2 at home, like, that's just brutal for the entire fan base. And again, they were dead silent in there. If you think that they were as quiet as possible in the Garden after this loss, think about how hyped up and just how loud it will be in Gainbridge Fieldhouse pretty much before Game 3 begins. All the Pacers would really have to do at this point is just win 1 at home. They've given themselves that breathing room now. And granted, in every single series, they have pretty much stayed the course. They have not trailed in any series in this postseason yet. And there's a good chance that that will stand. Of course, crazier things have happened. But when you get yourself in clutch time like this and you continue to crumble, repeatedly going through that can sting, even if they are considered to be a mentally tough team. That's just way too much happening consistently. Way too much. So again, this next game would truly be about imposing your will from the get-go. and maintaining it all the way through. They keep slipping up at the worst moments imaginable, and ultimately that is the difference maker. They need full control for a full 48 minutes. If they don't have it, the Pacers are an opportunistic team overall, and they're going to find a way. They have proven that they can consistently find a way. As improbable as these can be, or as standard as a good majority of them have been, they will find a way to overcome it. You cannot give them that room. It's as simple as that. But to get into the numbers here, Tyrese Halliburton did come down to earth for sure. Still, 14 points, 8 rebounds, 11 assists with a single turnover is nothing to necessarily slouch at. And Tyrese Halliburton also had shot 5 of 16 from the field with just 3 threes. Again, not necessarily the most efficient, but most of these shots were timely. They got the job done. And the assists as well, especially late, helped other guys get into their spots and make the necessary shots they needed to at the time. Miles Turner had 16 points, 2 defensive rebounds, 3 overall, and 2 blocks on 5 of 10 shooting with a 3. He had 13 of them in the fourth quarter alone. But the night went to Pascal Siakam, who had a playoff career high 39 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists on 15 of 23, shooting with 3 threes. Multiple people owe this man an apology. Multiple people. Even myself giving him, the tame criticism that I did. They were asking for him to do way more than he did in game 1, and he did that and then some. Like, if the first quarter saw him damn near match his output from the entire last game, you knew it was going to be a special night for him. And I mean, literally, a flurry of everything. Whether it was getting down and physical in the paint, getting in the post, hitting fadeaway shots, getting some good mid-range looks, and spacing out overall. Just attacking at all 3 levels relentlessly, and it paid off for him so much. Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith also had 12 points each. And TJ McConnell had 10 points and 4 assists off the bench with a single turnover on 5 of 8 shooting. As for the Knicks, Jalen Brunson had 36 points, 3 rebounds, and 11 assists. He did cut down the turnovers in half as well, which was huge. He also shot 13 of 27 from the field with 5 threes of his own. Karl Anthony Towns also got, restricted in playing time, which was a huge point of emphasis for other people. But at the same time, I that's not necessarily my biggest gripe. It does hurt, though, knowing that his offense would be something to be relied on, especially in situations like this, just to give Jalen Brunson that extra element of support. He shot 6 of 14 from the field and had 20 points and 7 rebounds. OG Anunoby had 16 points and 2 steals on 6 of 11 shooting with 2 threes. And Mikal Bridges also had 20 points on 9 of 18 shooting with 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. They had just 11 total bench points as well, which again, given how they are constructed, they can't necessarily afford to have that. They didn't get a Josh Hart game at all, especially on offensive side more so. But again, you expect that at this point of time. He does so many other things for you well that you live with those deficiencies on offense. But ultimately, that's what it's going to take. You have to play at your speed. And the fact that even they are getting their clocks sped up by this Pacers team is something that should be truly alarming for any Knicks fan out there, and especially Knicks personnel who are going to be prepping for this game tonight. It's going to be rough in Indiana, but they've got to try something, because if they go down 0-3, I can tell you right now, it is just donezo. But that'll do it for all of the game action. They did announce the actual All-NBA teams yesterday. So for the first team, you have Giannis, SGA, Nikola Jokic, Donovan Mitchell, and Jason Tatum. I have no problems with that slate of players. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the top 3 vote getters in the NBA for the MVP award. And then Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum, regardless of what you want to say about Jason Tatum, he was up in the race all season long as well as one of the better wing players in the league. And Donovan Mitchell had a very stellar season in his own right, as, again, another potential vote getter for the award. So when you look at that from that standpoint, it's ideal for those guys to be there. For the second team, you would have Jalen Brunson, Steph Curry, Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, and Evan Mobley. Again, no problems with this either. Jalen Brunson had another great season with this Knicks squad, and it just shows you that the fact that they were able to get him, yes, they tampered to get him. It's literally been well documented at this point that they tampered to get him, but it has paid off for them in more ways than one. I mean, even with them being at a large deficit in the series, the fact that they've been here at this point now only helps the cause. And the fact that he also took a $100+ million pay cut to stay with the organization and vault them to this territory is not something to scoff at either. His play has more than backed it up. Stephen Curry, honestly, probably would not have been a second-team player at the trade deadline. But after, of course, getting Jimmy Butler, his play obviously ramped up tremendously overall. So that spurred him to this spot. Anthony Edwards as well. Certainly a good season in his respect as well. The league leader in three-pointers and just a consistent force for this Timberwolves squad. Youthful energy that is quite literally just rejuvenated and revitalized this entire organization over just the past couple of seasons. After literally not making a Western Conference Finals in around 20 years, the fact that they have now done it in back-to-back seasons, no matter what happens with this one, and also given the fact that they lost last year's, no matter what, that can't be denied. Also, Evan Mobley getting Defensive Player of the Year and being one of the steady forces for the Cavs as well is nothing to scoff at either. And then LeBron, well, I mean, we all understand what the case is with him at this point. That's not necessarily a surprise. And then for the third team, you would have Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Halliburton, James Harden, and Karl Anthony Towns with Jalen Williams in. And this has caused a lot of, discourse, a lot of confusion, in multiple NBA circles. I mean, obviously, Halliburton, Cunningham, Harden, and Cat probably deserve to be here. But a lot of people do question Jalen Williams being here. I mean, honestly, I personally don't have a problem with it, and you have to give respect where respect is due. The fact that this man is an all-star, an all-defensive member, and now also an all-NBA third-team member, for him to be as young as he is and get this kind of recognition is something special. I mean, he had a pretty good season in every sense of the imagination. Okay, so I don't know why people would question it. Maybe they don't necessarily see him as elite just yet, but I mean, obviously, his two-way presence has made him a well-respected player across the entire league. Even if we're looking at just counting numbers here, obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, but 21.6 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists is not necessarily bad for an all-NBA third team member. I don't understand. I mean, not to mention as well, he also had 1.6 steals. And he shot very efficiently from the field, 48%, and also 36.5% from deep. How do you question that? I don't know. Maybe they might have something against him. I don't see why they would. I don't know why they would question it. I guess maybe some people were thinking, and honestly, I guess if you were looking for a player to replace him with, it would probably be a person like Alperen Sengun. But again, he would also be a first-time member as well, and he would also invoke a lot of pretty confusing and just, I guess, angry fans, outraged fans about his potential inclusion if he were to be given a slot in the third team. You're not going to necessarily please everybody at this point. But, recognizing Jalen Williams as one of the best 15 players in the league in this season, you have to keep in mind, is not necessarily an issue. I'm not going to act like there aren't necessarily other players that couldn't have been in here. There probably could have. I mean, team success certainly helps. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of these other players also just had very terrible stretches in the season. And also, some of these players who would have qualified for other spots, other awards, again, they were hurt. There's no controlling that. There's nothing you can do about it. So again, as an All-NBA third team member, I don't think that is necessarily the worst thing in the world. I mean, come on now. You just have to get over yourself at that point. But no matter what people say, all 15 of these guys, all of them, are very much deserving of it. All of them. So you got to give them credit for the seasons that they had. And yes, ironically enough, in terms of other vote getters who could have qualified, the very first name that I see here is none other than Alperen Sengun. So again, I guess it's really just about preference. Like, if you're going to argue about it, I guess, man. But, there would still be people on this side who would be clamoring for Jalen Williams in this situation if Alperen Sengun were to get in. Again, you're not going to make everybody happy with this. It is what it is. Jaren Jackson would have 55. Zubac would have 15. Darius Garland would have 6. Domantas Sabonis and Pascal Siakam would have 4. Bam Adebayo and Trae Young would both have 3. And then Devin Booker would also have 2 of his own. It's tough, man. It is tough. Even with people, even people, because you're questioning, I guess to some extent, Stephen Curry being in there, and LeBron being in there, but Durant not being in there. Well, I don't believe that he qualified. he missed too many games, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's just 3 games off. He missed too much time. That is also it. Again, if you're not staying healthy, then other, pathways are going to be open for other players to potentially creep in. And the fact that you can have a player in Jalen Williams do that for a great majority of this season while being mostly durable, and just being right above the threshold. There's something to that. Even if everybody still, honestly, all this time later, might not necessarily agree with the 65 game limit. But that's just how it works. And, I guess we'll see down the line if people want to change that back around. But until then, this is the result. And it's honestly not one that I have a problem with whatsoever. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.